September 17th, 2022, the Nebraska Cornhuskers meet their former rivals, the Oklahoma Sooners, in Lincoln, Nebraska, for a big showdown of, well, former rivals. I already said that. And the reason why I say former rivals is because, let's be honest, with the Oklahoma fans and ourselves, the bastards ditched us in 1996 for Texas. Up until that point, we had played 71 straight years. And then they formed a new conference in Texas, and Oklahoma said, no, we would like to stick with Texas because they're better than you, apparently. I don't know. You Sooner fans, I hope you're looking at this and you can respond to some of these things I say about you in the comments. I'd appreciate that. And I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe because I like bigger numbers. They're better than smaller numbers when it comes to this. So, September 17th, 2022, Nebraska versus Oklahoma. 71 straight years until 1996. Oklahoma leads the series. They've met 86 times, and Oklahoma leads the series 46-38 with 3 ties. The longest win streak was by Oklahoma from 1943 to 1958. Years that were not exactly good to Nebraska, largely because of the World War II thing and how drained the population was because of World War II. Someday I may get into that, but not now. We're talking about Oklahoma. The Sooners come to Lincoln, and wow, have they had a lot of changes since last season. Nebraska fired their offensive staff. Oklahoma got, pretty much complete replacement there. And I got to ask, again, you Sooners fans, Lincoln Riley went to USC, and you were very angry about him leaving. And I know he said some things, whatever. I get the whole rejection. He rejected you and went to USC. Probably belongs there more than he does in Oklahoma because he's all flash and no substance. Bang! And then you get Brent Venables. And I mean, from my perspective, Brent Venables, Lincoln Riley, why you even complain about Lincoln? It's like he did you the biggest favor he possibly could have done, because Brent Venables has been around for a while and he is a damn good coach. And if you ask me, would you like Scott Frost or Brent Venables? Brent Venables all freaking day long, yes, because he's been around, he's done things. Let's take a look at Brent's career. Oklahoma, 1999, not all of it. We're just going to go through some brushy things. Oklahoma, 1999 to 2011 under Bob Stoops. I don't know, they might have won some national titles under Bob Stoops. Seems like they won. And then he went to Clemson from 2012 to last season, 2021, where he was a linebackers coach, the defensive coordinator, and the associate head coach from 2018 to 2021. He's an excellent coach. Maybe he won't be a great head coach, but he's got a damn good track record. So Brent Venables coming to Oklahoma. This will be his first season as head coach. Gobs of players transferred. Spencer Rattler was a preseason Heisman candidate last year, and then he wasn't that good. Honestly, I'm not sure why he got that much hype. And then Caleb Williams took over, and he was pretty good. Now, Spencer Rattler has gone to South Carolina, and Caleb Williams followed Lincoln Riley to USC. Our buddy Brent Venables, hired Jeff Lebby as his offensive coordinator. And Jeff Lebby is a Oklahoma grad. He's been at Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin in the last 2 seasons, and he has a pretty good offense, I think. It seems like he is a good choice as an offensive coordinator. In 2021, his team at Ole Miss was 6th in total offense with 492.5 yards per game. Not shabby. Venables also brought in Ted Roof as his defensive coordinator. But a lot of changes. Well, let's look at the offense. Let's look at the quarterback situation, because that's the one where we always start, right? Well, they bring in a Central Florida UCF transfer, Dillon Gabriel. Now, here's the key with that. Jeff Lebby coached him in 2018 and 2019. So it's kind of interesting to see how different things work now. My coach went over here to Oklahoma, which is a bigger name program than UCF. And the coach kind of goes, hey, man, we're going to do things here. You want to join us? And then because of the transfer portal, they just get to go, yeah. And it's kind of a different dynamic now in college football. I think it's interesting. We're going to see how it all sorts out. Back to Oklahoma. He played 25 games at UCF. Dillon Gabriel, 70 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. That's a pretty good ratio. So they have a quarterback. I mean, looks like they have their guy. Running backs, junior Eric Gray returns, 412 yards last season, 5.2 yards per carry. He had 84 yards against Nebraska when we played him last year. Kennedy Brooks is back, and they have 2 4-star freshmen coming in, Javante Barnes and 𝐉𝐨𝐬𝐁𝐨𝐬. That's an interesting name. Oklahoma's receiving core, Marvin Mims, returns. He was the leading receiver the past 2 seasons, 32 receptions for 705 yards and 5 TDs last season. Third team all Big 12. So they got the quarterback, they got receivers to throw to. 𝐒𝐢𝐿 missed 2021. He'll be back. In 2020, he had 37 receptions for 530 yards and 4 TDs, which is production. Pretty good production. They lost Mike Wood to the NFL, and a guy named Mario Williams went to USC. You know, you can't spell suck without USC. Just remember that, Oklahoma fans, and use it whenever you need to. Whenever you maybe you walk into the grocery store, hey, or just forget that Lincoln Riley left because fuck him anyway. Offensive line, 3 starters return. Senior right guard Chris Murray was second team all Big 12 last season. Tackle Anton Harrison and center Andrew Rhyme. Offensive line coach Bill Bedenbaugh stayed in Norman instead of going to USC, and that gives them a fair amount of consistency between the coaching staffs and their offensive line. Always good for an offense. A defense, 5 starters return. That sounds kind of iffy, doesn't it? But they're bringing in a lot of transfers. And this is something we can see now with college football, where you have, the whole portal thing can make up for your recruiting, because you can bring in experienced players, and that's what Oklahoma does, particularly on defense. So 5 starters return, and let's see, 3 NFL draft picks left off the defensive line, so they have those holes to fill, which are pretty big holes. But they have Jalen Redmond returns, defensive tackle, and they get a transfer from Tulane, Jeffrey Johnson, who played 45 games at Tulane. Again, experience. And then they have a Hawaii transfer, Jonah Lua. I butchered that guy's name. 34 tackles and 4 sacks for the Warriors last season. At linebacker, they have weak side linebacker Deshaun White returning. He was the 3rd leading tackler with 66 tackles. At middle linebacker, they have David Ugwoegbu returning, and he had 49 tackles, mostly played as a reserve last season, but obviously with 49 tackles, again, experience. And then they have this guy named T.D. Roof coming over from Appalachian State, who is the son of the defensive coordinator, Ted Roof. And he has last season had 87 tackles, or the last 2 seasons, I'm sorry. The last 2 seasons, he's had 87 tackles and 10 tackles for loss. That's fairly good production. I don't care if you're coming from Appalachian State. Still, again, experience and production being added to a defense where they lost that stuff. Defensive backfield for Oklahoma, kind of a lot of guys. They have senior nickel Justin Broyles returning. He's a 4th leading tackler with 55 tackles. They have sophomore corners Devon Graham, who had 37 tackles last season, and Woody Washington returning at 27 tackles. Safety Trey Morrison, 41 games for North Carolina. Again, a transfer portal guy with experience, 163 career tackles. They have 2 sophomore safeties in Billy Bowman, who had 22 tackles last season, and Key Lawrence with 47 tackles. So a fair amount of experience in the defensive secondary. And I think with Brent Venables coming in, that he's coached the defense over the years, I wouldn't really look at him. Defenses seem to be Oklahoma's, downfall when it came to getting to really the upper echelon of things over the past few years. And I think when you see the hire of Brent Venables, that's going to be taken care of one way or another. You know, we're going to see a very different Oklahoma team. I think we're still going to, you know, with Jeff Lebby, we're still going to see a really flashy, high-scoring offense, but we're going to see a much improvement on defense. You know, Oklahoma and Texas are going to the SEC in the next few years. Who's better set up to do that? You look at Texas, and they're kind of like we are. They've had bad hires. They've had bad organization. They have recruited way more 4- and 5-star recruits and done nothing with them than we have. But you kind of look at them and go, wow, you guys are going to get shellacked in the SEC. And you look at Oklahoma and say, you hired one of the best coaches in the nation. Your recruiting is probably going to be fine. Your Oklahoma Sooner football program should be fine going into the SEC. And it'll be fun, you know. Even though I said that thing about you being a bunch of bastards that ditch us for Texas, don't you think I want to see you kind of make noise in the SEC here? When you move to the SEC, I'm going to feel bad for the former Big 12 people. Yeah. But if there's an SEC game on and it's like Oklahoma versus Auburn, Oklahoma versus Alabama, who do you think I'm rooting for here? It sure as hell isn't Auburn or Alabama or Florida. Screw them. Screw them all. Oklahoma has got 2 tune-up games before they get to Nebraska. They play UTEP, University of Texas, El Paso, and Kent State. They're little morsels, snacks. That's what those games will be. So you'll kind of have a chance to see what Oklahoma is about a little bit before they get to Lincoln. But let's face it, in 4 years, Scott Frost does not have a signature win. None. We're not talking about Scott Frost failures, but this is a chance to get Oklahoma maybe a little bit in transition, maybe a little bit with a new roster, with a new quarterback, learning a new offense, trying to do things. This is a really big chance for Nebraska and Scott Frost to get that signature win. And I said before, I'm not doing predictions on this because I'll save that for later after I go through the entire preview of all our opponents for the season. But this should be a huge game. Last year's game was, I think, amazing that Nebraska played as well as they did and then lost, by 1 score or whatever. Interesting to note, Casey Thompson last year, that guy that came to Nebraska from Texas, played well against Oklahoma. 20 of 34 passes for 388 yards and 5 touchdowns and a 55-48 loss to Oklahoma. I know I wept for Texas when they lost to Oklahoma. But it was, it was a fun game. So Nebraska and Oklahoma back together again. Do I think it'd be neat if they played every year? Yeah, but our destinies are not as intertwined as I would have liked. Would I like the old Big 8 to come back? I try not to wish for things that are make-believe just because it really messes up your life when you do that. Would I wish the old Big 12, Nebraska was still in the Big 12? No. Do I wish Nebraska would be winning? Yes. Do I wish Nebraska would beat Oklahoma this year on September 17th? Hell yes. It'd be a nice win. And until then, I'm going to keep going through opponent previews. We're going to look at who we're up against. And at the end of that, hopefully I'll do a video to put it all together and make predictions for the season. This is John Johnston with Corn Nation. Please subscribe and watch my channel and join us for more fun as we head into the 2022 football season for our beloved Huskers. Go Big Red!